For the last week, I have had a question burning in my head because a week ago, shockwaves were sent through the Jehovah's Witness community when it was announced that changes were being made to its infamous blood doctrine. Now, this isn't something that's voted on. This isn't something that ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses have any say in, because they are all too familiar with the idea that
recently the governing body decided
The governing body's decided
that the governing body has decided to
the governing body decided that the governing body has decided
The governing body has decided that
the governing body has decided
The governing body has concluded,
and rather annoyingly, we have to accept that, yes, the governing body is the one that makes the decision. But when did they make this decision? And I feel like that might be the most important question that can be asked surrounding this entire topic. So let's talk about it. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today we are exploring the question of when did the governing body decide to make this change. Quickly before we get into it, don't forget to drop a like on the video. It might not seem like a big deal to you, but it makes a massive difference on my end of things in helping the video get out to more people on YouTube. It helps spreading awareness about some of the dangers with regard to Jehovah's Witness life. Also, if you're not subscribed or if you don't have those notifications turned on, check if you do, because that would make me very happy. And again, it really helps the videos perform well in the YouTube algorithm, makes it easier for me to continue to make content like this. So if you enjoy it, consider subscribing. That's about all I ever really ask of anyone. So now that we've got all of that YouTube stuff out of the way, obviously this is going to be a question that pretty hard to find a definitive answer to, but let's first take into account what we do know. So I think a good place to start with this is, what has the governing body told the world about the process of them coming to decisions where they make these massive doctrinal changes?
just as daylight grows brighter and brighter gradually, a proper understanding of Bible truths comes gradually as we need it and as we are able to absorb it and use it. And we appreciate that, don't we? It's easier on our eyes when literal light gets brighter gradually. And so it is with the understanding of Jehovah's purpose as well. Well, knowing this, then, we are not embarrassed about adjustments that are made, nor is an apology needed for not getting it exactly right previously. So generally, the process happens this way. First of all, a question comes up. And so it could be that a governing body member in his personal study or his personal Bible reading notices something that then raises a question. Or it could be that a question comes up during the preparation or translation of spiritual food that requires more consideration. World events might put the spotlight on a particular prophecy that then gets closer attention. So in one way or another, a question comes up. And that question is then put on the governing body's agenda for discussion. And the question is, does this require or warrant additional research? The brothers are not making a final decision on what the new understanding will be, just asking, does it warrant additional research? And if the answer is yes, then a research team is assigned to provide recommendations and research for the governing body to consider. Well, once that whole research package is compiled, it's placed back on the governing body's agenda for review. And of course, once it goes on the agenda, then each individual member of the governing body, under prayer, reviews the information and thinks about it in preparation for the meeting. And then it's discussed as a group at the governing body meeting, again, under prayer, relying on Jehovah's Holy Spirit. And when this matter is discussed, the discussion is not rushed, nor is the decision forced. But often, like in the first century, it's a lively discussion as the brothers feel free to share their opinions and their thoughts, the results of their meditation and their research. But there's also humility there, because again, none of the brothers are trying to force their idea or try to get their thoughts approved, but there is this collective, unified desire to see Jehovah's direction on the matter and where is he steering things. The goal is to discern Jehovah's direction on the matter. And often, or at times we could say, the final result might be quite different than what the research package originally recommended. But that's Jehovah's Spirit working through the faithful and discreet slave to bring us to the right decision. And the brothers are looking for a unanimous decision. At times it may seem like this is a solid adjustment, but if it's not unanimous, it just might not be time yet for it to be revealed. So it's not forced, the matter is set aside. And it could be that sometime later, even some years later, the matter comes back up and then it sails right through. Or maybe it does get approved, but now with a couple of key points discerned that weren't discerned earlier. Well, with this thorough process, under prayer, and when there is unanimous accord, then the brothers take that as Jehovah's direction and then are happy to share it with the brotherhood.
So there is a time element involved with the decisions that they make. They have to gather all of their research, or they don't do it, they send someone else to do it, and then they discuss it, and if they don't come to a unanimous decision, they throw their hands up in the air and say, let's shelve this until a later date. However many years that could be, we are not entirely sure. But this isn't without historic precedence as well, because in Raymond Franz's book, Crisis of Conscience, he talks about a time when they had made adjustments to their blood policy in the past. I won't get into the very specifics and details. I know I keep teasing it, but I am still working on that deep dive video about this. There's just a lot to cover, so I wanted to get this out before that. But without getting into too many specifics, they were making a decision with respect to a particular type of treatment that a lot of people had been calling and writing letters to the branch office asking for what the ruling would be. So this is something that was never officially printed in a Watchtower magazine, but anytime someone had inquired to a Bethel or branch office, they had gotten information that said, no, you cannot have this procedure. So when they realized that they finally did need to make this change, but they didn't have it in print already, and they didn't want to embarrass themselves by printing something, a clarification of a rule that they never printed in the first place, they decided that they would try and track down everyone that had written in or called in. And we'll pick up the story right there in his own words. This is on page 142. Then they realized that many of the inquiries had come in by phone and that they had no record of such phone calls and absolutely no way of determining who such inquiring hemophiliacs were. Whether in the interim between the old ruling and the new, some had died, they did not know. Whether some whom they had not been able to contact would yet die because of holding on to the old ruling, they did not know. They only knew that they had followed instructions, being loyally obedient to their superiors in the organization. This change in policy was made official at the June 11th, 1975 session of the governing body. It was not until 3 years later, in 1978, however, that the changes was finally put into print, though rather obscurely stated and strangely listed in with the issue of, and then he goes on, blah, 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 blah. So for the relevant points here, Raymond Franz confirmed that this time element exists, even after a decision is made, before it's officially printed in Watchtower, or in this case of what we're talking about now, said in a governing body update. 3 years went by, and he admitted whether some people died because of the old ruling and wanting to be faithful, they didn't know. Whether someone, might die in the future because of holding on to that old ruling, they didn't really know. But the bigger problem is that they didn't care. In Raymond Franz's book, time and again, he mentions how the governing body was always trying to protect its own image, how they were trying to protect the image and the reputation of the Jehovah's Witness brand, if you will, and that they were willing to go to rather extraordinary lengths in order to do that. So when you have a group of people more interested in their own image than they are of the lives of the people that are under them, serious questions, especially from a Christian perspective, really need to be asked. Now, under normal circumstances, when the governing body is going to change the way that they are going to apply one of Jesus' parables, or whether or not something has prophetic significance, it's not that serious. It's not going to usually not directly affect someone to where it becomes a life and death decision. But this one is a life and death decision. And so it's my opinion that there is no room for dilly-dallying about waiting till the right time in order to reveal it. Once the decision is made, and I would go as far as saying once it's even being considered, that level of transparency is required if someone is going to give you that amount of trust. Jehovah's Witnesses trust the governing body absolutely. They trust them with their own lives, and even scarier, with the lives of their children. And so there is no room for a lack of transparency. There is no room for there to be weeks, months, or years in between when the decision is made and when it's finally announced. It is wholly unacceptable. So with that being said, can we make any reasonable speculations about when the governing body actually decided to make this massive change to their blood doctrine? And I might be on the crack pipe here, so you might have to bear with me, but I suspect that I've maybe come up with something that would suggest potentially that this was on the chopping block for longer than they would really care to admit. So let's start this how would you say Lewis Carroll? Like Orwellian. Lewis Carrollian? Carolinas? Let's go down the rabbit hole. You know what I'm trying to say. And we'll start this in 2014, when during the annual meeting, the governing body came out with some clarifications with their understanding of types and antitypes.
Let's get right into our subject. Types and antitypes. Years ago, our publications often applied certain Bible accounts and certain Bible characters as types of something greater. But you've noticed that in recent years, that is seldom done. And the purpose of this talk is to explain why. First of all, what is a type and what is an antitype? Well, the Watchtower of September 15th, 1950 defined them this way. It said, "A type is a representation of something that will come to pass at a future time. The antitype is the reality of the thing which the type represents." So that was the definition that was given by the Watchtower.
Now, David Splooge can't be bothered to actually finish his little quote about what the definition of a type and antitype was in 1950, so I got to do it for him. The latter half of the paragraph he was reading from says, "Dramatic episodes and experiences serve as types, a study of which will give a person a reasonable facsimile or picture of the reality, and therefore they are called prophetic pictures. A type is also a pattern that serves as a guide in understanding the reality." Now, I think he knew what he was doing when he only gave half of the definition that Watchtower gave for types and antitypes, and leaving out the part about patterns, because as I'm going to argue for the rest of this video, Watchtower had a pattern that they used when trying to figure out whether or not blood would be acceptable for Christians in its medical usage and not just as a dietary restriction. But let's let him continue telling us about what their adjustment was going to be.
We deeply appreciate the spiritual heritage that was passed on to us by the early Bible students. In harmony with Zechariah chapter 4 and verse 10, we do not despise the day of small things. However, the light does get brighter. and we feel that we must follow the light wherever it leads us. Our love should be for the truth and not for a particular doctrine or teaching. Well, how would you summarize this talk in a few words? The wrong answer is, we don't believe in types and antitypes anymore. We do. We most certainly do. Where the Scriptures identify them as such, we embrace them. But where the Bible is silent, we must be silent.
So in 2014, it was established that if the Bible was silent, then they would be silent. They weren't going to find these extra meanings, this divine shadows and facsimiles about past things and future events and how those would all tie together. They were going to be a little bit more strict, a little bit more Spartan-like with their biblical reading and not have all of the extra bits and pieces, which calls into question how historically did the Jehovah's Witnesses talk about their blood doctrine, how they even arrived at it. Was that sort of a type, anti-type, prophetic pattern situation? The thing that really started me down this path, even to begin with, was when I went back and watched Garrett Loesch's governing body update for a second time. It really stuck out like a sore thumb to me that he wasn't being honest with his presentation. He didn't use the traditional way that Jehovah's Witnesses explained in their literature how they arrived at their blood doctrine. In his talk, which was very brief, by the way, only a couple of minutes, he made it seem as if everything was predicated on what was going on in Leviticus with the Mosaic Law. He only briefly and passively mentions this.
Jehovah gave Noah and his descendants the timeless command, only flesh with its life, its blood, you must not eat. He likewise directed Christians to abstain from what is strangled and from blood.
It's my opinion that he is applying a little bit of the magician's code over here. He is doing a little misdirection. And I think that this is because he wants people to think that the Jehovah's Witnesses have always arrived at this doctrine based off of the Mosaic Law. It was the law covenant, and obviously we're not under that anymore. And hopefully people will just nod along and not really be paying attention. But like I said, I watched this a second time, and I was paying attention. And I remembered that is never how I remember talking about the blood doctrine. It was always founded on what happened with Noah. And when people would try and assert that we only would do this because of it being in the Mosaic Law, we would actually point and laugh at them like, you guys don't understand our doctrine. And boy, howdy, hey, we don't have to go too far, because in the 1950s, there was another Watchtower that was produced that a questions from readers substantiates what I'm saying. This is from May 1st, 1950, and this is a reply to a letter further on blood transfusions. Your frank statement concerning blood transfusion is appreciated, and for it, we are not taking any spiritual action against you or against anyone else, but must let the great lawgiver be your judge, as he is ours. It's important to note that this is 2 years before Watchtower established their disfellowshipping and shunning policies. So it's pretty strange that they're saying we're not going to take any action against you. It's not really something that a loving, kind, understanding organization does. Hey, just so you know, we're not going to take any action against you for the crime of what? Asking for a clarification, or asking for a little help in understanding something. This is not really seeming like an organization that likes to be questioned. Just my 2 cents on the thing. But they go and talk about several of the points that she made, but as far as this video is concerned, we're going to focus in on this one. You say God's laws concerning the disposal of animal blood have no bearing upon the matter of blood transfusion. We say that God's laws in this matter are significant and typical, and that they do have a strong bearing upon the matter. Whose position is safer, yours or ours? Whose position is more scriptural and showing careful regard for the laws of God? So here they are acknowledging that the way they've come to their conclusion with regard to blood transfusions in a medical sense is because God's laws on blood were typical. Remember Watchtower lingo here, types and antitypes. The type is something that would set a pattern. It would cast a shadow on a future reality. And Watchtower down through the years has continued to establish this. Whenever they are questioned about their blood doctrine, they start with Noah and say, well, God gave the command to Noah. And then that command was further expanded upon in the Mosaic Law, which was further expanded upon in the first century with the governing body or older men saying to abstain from blood. It was a prophetic pattern, a type, antitype. That is how they arrived at their conclusions about blood transfusions. And they conclude their letter to this woman by saying, we shall let the foregoing paragraphs suffice as an answer to your 7 pages, hoping that they make our stand still clearer to you. Whether you accept or reject does not hurt or hinder us. You are the one that must take the consequences of the course that you pursue. We must bear our responsibility before God as those trying to expound his sacred word and commandments. So just to make sure that this point is clear, when the Jehovah's Witnesses would defend their position and people would say, but we aren't under the Mosaic Law anymore, they would point to this starting with Noah and the law that God gave to Noah and say that this is typical. This was a prophetic foreshadowing. In one article, I can't remember exactly where it's from. I've read so many at this point, and I don't want to just bog you down with every quote that I found. But in one statement, they said that God's law anticipated the medical use of blood, again, firmly establishing that they used a type, antitype, internal logic to come to the conclusions that they did about the medical use of blood. Now, before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's actually crack open ye old Bible and look at exactly what was said to Noah. What was the actual command given? And does the Jehovah's Witness position actually make sense when you just take a second to think about it? Genesis chapter 9, the ark lands on Mount Ararat. Things are looking a little drier than they had been for the last, well, your guess is as good as mine for how many days they were actually in the ark, but let's not get bogged down with those details. Genesis 9, and God went on to bless Noah and his sons and say to them, be fruitful and become many and fill the earth. And a fear of you and a terror of you will continue upon every living creature of the earth and every flying creature of the heavens, upon everything that goes moving on the ground and upon the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are now given. Every moving animal that is alive may serve as food for you. As in the case of green vegetation, I do give it all to you. Only flesh with its soul, its blood, you must not eat. You could substitute soul for life there, or for a more modern translation, it would be with its life blood, you must not eat. So in God's original commandment to not eat blood, he was telling them that you no longer have to be vegetarians. You can eat animal meat. Now, God, being the engineer of everything here on planet Earth, I don't think that it would have escaped his notice that even when an animal is bled, there is still fractions, if you will, measurable fractions of blood that still remains in that meat. I won't go down the whole scientific paper, but I'll put a link into the description if you want to say that I'm wrong here, or that no, the red meat, it's actually just myoglobin. I understand that, but this has been studied, it's been measured, it's just a fact. So I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to. I can hear the keyboard already clanking right now. Oh, but the red meat, those juices are from a steak aren't actually blood. I understand. Read the scientific paper that's linked below and educate yourself, and then we'll all be on the same speed. But my argument here is that why would God, the engineer of everything, someone that gave us the handbook that knows how these things work, why would he tell them to eat blood fractions, consume blood fractions, if he knew that at some point 6,000 years later, he was going to tell people that they couldn't have blood fractions in a life-saving capacity? Was God's original commandment, did that have anything to do with a total and complete lack of any minute fraction of blood? Or was he talking about generally not consuming whole blood? Every Christian scholar or commentator that I've found seems to think that, well, this is pretty obvious. This does not anticipate a fractional use of blood at some later date. It's against drinking or eating whole blood products. So why then did the Jehovah's Witnesses come up with this absolutely absurd idea that that it just wasn't whole blood that they weren't to have transfused or to eat or to drink or to consume, but even blood fractions, which is horribly irresponsible and very dangerous because, little known fact, when you get a blood transfusion, you're not, generally speaking, getting a whole blood transfusion. More often than not, it is with one of blood's main components, either red blood cells, white blood cells, etc. So if God was against that, why would he tell them to consume blood fractions while also telling them to not consume blood fractions? It simply doesn't track. Now, that's just a sidebar, but we already have the alley-oop of the types, antitypes to address the big question that's been on my mind. Is when did the governing body actually know that they were getting rid of this whole blood nonsense? So my suspicions led me to ask the question, has the governing body decided or come to the conclusion that, well, the account of Noah isn't a type or an anti-type situation? And when was that? Well, let's go over to Jeffrey Jackson for that answer.
The first question is, once the Great Tribulation starts, so we saw there in the chart with the destruction of Babylon the Great. So once it starts, is there a door of opportunity for non-believers to actually join us in serving Jehovah? Is there a door of opportunity? What have we said in the past? We've said, no, there will not be an opportunity for people to join us at that time. Now, why did we say that? Well, basically, we viewed the account of the flood as being a type and anti-type portrayal, and that we thought the fact that the door of the ark was closed prior to the flood coming indicated that the door of opportunity would close once the Great Tribulation started. But of course it's true, Jesus did compare the time of Noah with the presence of him as a reigning king. But notice Jesus didn't say anything that indicated this was a type, anti-type arrangement, and he certainly didn't mention anything with regard to a door of opportunity closing.
So in 2023, they had acknowledged that they no longer felt despite Jesus directly saying it, but he says, well, he only compared it. It wasn't a direct, hey, this is a type, this is an antitype. So do with that what you will. But they said, the story of Noah, yeah, that's not really a type, antitype situation. So what we know about the process of which the governing body establishes a new doctrine that they have told us is that they assign a research team to a subject and they gather all of the information that is applicable. In fact, just for the sake of continuity, let me play that clip again.
And if the answer is yes, then a research team is assigned to provide recommendations and research for the governing body to consider. And this research includes a summary of everything that we have said, the organization has said on the subject since 1879. All the Watchtowers, what have we said?
So they gather all the information about something and say, okay, now that we have our research packets, we will prayerfully consider all of the relevant articles and things that have been published as far back as 1879. So I suspect that in that packet, there would have been information regarding this type, antitype, prophetic pattern with Noah and how that was used to invent their blood doctrine. At its very inception, it had nothing to do with the Mosaic law, inherently, because we're not under the law. That got rid of. I said that so poorly. That was dispersed of. That was even worse. I'm just going to stop trying. That was no longer in effect. There we go. We finally did it. Fourth quarter. Downtown, Steph Curry style. That was no longer in effect with the death of Jesus. But that was never their main arguing point. So I suspect that in that research packet, as to when they got this, I don't know, but we know that they talked about it at the annual meeting in 2023. So I think it's safe to assume that at a minimum, the governing body was considering making adjustments to the blood doctrine because it's related to being a type, antitype from its inception with Noah, that they knew about it in 2022, 2023. But I think, honestly, in my heart of hearts, that they probably knew that this was on the table all the way back in 2014. And the reason I say that is because if you could ask a believing Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Jehovah's Witness or anyone that even knew about Jehovah's Witnesses, and you just went up to them for the last 30 years and said, if there was one doctrinal change that you could make that seems like it's not really founded in the Bible, if, especially since 2014, if we're not doing the type, antitype, or prophetic pattern, logical, concluding thing anymore, what would you change? And my suspicion is that a majority of people would say, well, we probably need to revisit that blood doctrine, wouldn't we? Wouldn't that be the first priority? So my suspicion is that all the way back in 2014, this was being discussed and talked about. And at a bare minimum, 2022, 2023 is when they knew that they were going to be making adjustments to that. Now, let me play a clip of something that was in that 2014 annual meeting that sort of brought tears to my eyes when I was kind of putting this video together.
Thousands and thousands of people die every year on the highway as a direct result of drivers going to sleep at the wheel. But now think about this. Going to sleep spiritually, of course, is much more serious. If one of Jehovah's servants is driving, goes to sleep, runs off the road, kills himself, it doesn't necessarily rule out his being resurrected to everlasting life in the new world. But if one of God's servants goes to sleep spiritually, and the end of this system catches him in that condition, he will be gone for all eternity.
Thousands and thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses have died because of the governing body being spiritually asleep. If you want to get into paradise, you have to be spiritually awake. So by their own logic, following the governing body means you're not going to get into paradise. I don't really know how to think about this conclusion, this suspicion, whatever you want to call it. Because, as I said at the beginning, a month is too long, a year is too long, and a decade is terrorism. Like, just think about the idea that this was sitting on the governing body's members' desks. It was sitting in their minds for years, knowing that it was going to be directly involved with someone living or dying. Instead of being transparent and telling people, let me put this a different way. What would you do? Jehovah's Witnesses, millions of people around the world, they're your people. It's your job to protect them. What would you do? Would you just sit there and let people die? And then not apologize, not acknowledge it, have zero humility? What would you do if you knew that something was fundamentally wrong and you were going to change the policy? I know what I would do. I would be like, hey, guys, we're considering this. This is an emergency JW broadcasting. This is on the table. We're not quite sure what the state of the blood doctrine is right now. So everything is up for personal choice. There's going to be no disfellowshipping. The HLC, we're backing away from that. It's between you and God until we figure this thing out. So don't get panic. Do your own research. Do your own thinking. Try and figure it out. But we do know that a change is coming. We don't know when. We haven't figured it out yet. We're waiting for the new light to develop. That's what I would do. I would admit it. I would tell people. I would warn them. A month, a year, it's too long. So what would you do if those were your people and your people were dying and you were just sitting on it? I guess that's all I have to say. I'll catch you guys next time.
We love you all very much. Please know that we love you all very much.
We love you all very much.
We love you very much.
Brothers and sisters, we love you all very much.
Brothers and sisters, please know that we love you all very much.
Be assured that we cherish each and every one of you, dear brothers and sisters.
We love you all very much.
Dear brothers and sisters, we love you all very much.
Brothers and sisters, please know that we love you all very much. From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is JW Broadcasting.